As the night settles around you, imagine a world of endless seas, where the wind carries the creak of wooden ships and the distant call of adventure. Picture yourself standing on a rocky shore, the air sharp with salt, and the promise of stories carved in frost and fire. Tonight, we're not just recounting history, we're stepping into the Viking Age, a time when fearless men and women sailed uncharted waters, forged legends, and shaped the world with their courage and cunning. This is a tale of warriors, explorers, and dreamers, whose lives echoed across centuries, leaving traces in the sagas we still whisper today. Their world was raw, untamed, and pulsing with a rhythm that feels both distant and strangely familiar. Close your eyes, if you'd like, and let the gentle cadence of this story carry you back to a time when the northern lights danced over fjords and the stars guided ships to unknown lands. This is not a lecture, but a journey, a chance to drift through the mists of history as you ease into rest. From the first sparks of the Viking Age to its fading embers, we'll wander through tales of bravery, betrayal, and the quiet moments that defined a people. Whether you're listening to fall asleep or simply to lose yourself in the past, this story is yours to unfold. I'd love to know where you're joining me from tonight. What's the time where you are? Is it a quiet evening? Or are you tucked in, ready to let these ancient tales lull you into dreams? Drop a comment below to share. I read everyone, and it means the world to connect with you all. If you enjoy this journey, don't forget to tap that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Your support keeps these tales alive, and I'm so grateful to have you here. Hello, my name is Sherry, and welcome to my channel. So let's begin. The wind howls through the fjords, a low moan that weaves through the pines and skims the icy waters below. It's the late 8th century, and in the rugged lands of Scandinavia, where Norway's cliffs rise like sentinels, Denmark's fields stretch toward the sea, and Sweden's forests cradle secrets, life pulses with a rhythm as old as the stones. The people here, the Norse, are bound to the land in a way that feels eternal. Their homes, carved from timber and turf, huddle against the long winters, their hearths glowing with the warmth of stories told in the flicker of firelight. These are not yet the Vikings of legend, not the raiders who will haunt the dreams of Europe. They are farmers, fishers, and craftsmen, their days shaped by the seasons and the tides. But beneath the surface, something stirs, a restless spirit, a whisper of ambition that will soon set the world ablaze. Imagine standing on a rocky hill, looking out over a village nestled in a valley. The air is sharp, scented with pine and salt. Longhouses dot the landscape, their sod roofs blending into the earth, smoke curling from their chimneys like offerings to the sky. Men mend fishing nets, their hands rough from years of toil, while women weave wool into cloaks that will shield against the bitter cold. Children chase each other through the mud, their laughter mingling with the bleating of goats. It's a hard life, etched in calluses and endurance, but it's vibrant, too. The Norse are not a people who bow to hardship. They wrestle it, shape it, make it their own. Their world is one of balance, between the land's bounty and its cruelty, between the gods above and the spirits below. This land, though, is not enough. The soil is thin in places, the winters long, and the population grows. Young men gaze at the horizon, where the sea glints like a promise. They've heard tales of distant shores, lands of green fields, glittering treasures, and peoples who know nothing of the North's hunger. The sea, vast and untamed, is both a barrier and a bridge. It calls to them, not with words, but with a pull as deep as the tides. In the harbors, shipwrights work with reverence, shaping oak into vessels that will carry dreams across the waves. These are not mere boats, but extensions of the Norse soul, sleek, sturdy, ready to dance with the storms. The Norse are a people of stories, and their tales are not just for entertainment, but for survival. In the long nights, they gather around the fire, and the skalds, poets of the hearth, spin sagas of heroes and gods. Odin, the All-Father, watches from his high seat, his ravens circling the world. Thor, with his hammer Mjolnir, guards against the chaos of giants. Freyja, radiant and fierce, weaves love and war into the same thread. These stories are not distant myths, but living truths, guiding the Norse through a world they believe is both wondrous and perilous. To die well, to live bravely, to leave a name that echoes, these are the measures of a life worth living. Yet, for all their reverence for tradition, the Norse are not bound by it. They are curious, adaptable, unafraid to challenge the unknown. Their world is changing, and they feel it in the air, in the creak of their ships, in the dreams that wake them in the dark. Across the sea, monasteries gleam with gold, and kingdoms grow fat on trade. The Norse have traded before furs, amber, walrus ivory, but now something bolder takes root. Why trade when you can take? Why wait when you can sail? The first sparks of the Viking age are kindling, born not of greed alone, but of a hunger for more, for glory, for wealth, for a place in the songs of their people. Picture a young man, perhaps named Bjorn, standing at the edge of a fjord. His hair is braided, his eyes fixed on the water. He's no king, no jarl, just a farmer's son with a heart too big for the fields. His father speaks of the old ways, of tending the land and honoring the gods, but Bjorn dreams of the sea. He's heard whispers of a plan, a daring voyage to a place called Lindisfarne, where a holy house holds treasures unguarded. The elders warn of danger, of foreign gods and unknown shores, but Bjorn feels the pull of destiny. He's not alone. Others like him, young and restless, gather in the harbors, their voices low but eager. The ships are ready, the winds are right. This is the world on the cusp of the Viking Age, a world of quiet strength and unspoken yearning. It's a world where the ordinary and the extraordinary are woven together, where a farmer might become a legend, and a single voyage might change the course of history. As the stars begin to pierce the twilight, The Norse stand at a crossroads. They do not yet know the name Viking, but they feel its spirit stirring in their blood. What happens when they answer that call, when the sails rise and the oars dip into the sea? The answer lies just beyond the horizon, waiting to unfold. The year is 793, and the sea is restless, its waves churning under a sky heavy with clouds. On a small island off the coast of Northumbria, the monastery of Lindisfarne stands like a beacon of faith, its stone walls weathered by salt and wind. Monks move quietly through their days, copying manuscripts, tending gardens, and offering prayers to a God they believe holds the world in his hands. Their lives are ordered, serene, a rhythm of devotion etched into the tides. The island is a holy place, a sanctuary of learning and light. Its treasures, gold crosses, jeweled reliquaries, silver chalices, gleaming in the candlelit chapel. To the monks, these are offerings to the divine. To the men sailing across the North Sea, they are something else entirely. Picture the scene: a morning shrouded in mist, the air damp and cool. The monks are at their morning prayers, their voices rising in soft Latin chants, when a shadow breaks the horizon. Longships, their prows carved with snarling dragons, slice through the waves. The sails are taut, striped with red and white, and the oars beat a steady rhythm, like the pulse of a waking beast. These are Norse warriors, men from the fjords of Norway, their eyes sharp with hunger and purpose. They are not here to trade or parley. They are here to take, to carve their names into the annals of time. At their head is a leader, perhaps a man like Ragnar, though the sagas blur his name, his beard braided, his axe resting lightly on his shoulder. The sea has carried them far, and now Lindisfarne lies before them, unguarded, unaware. The monks have heard tales of northern heathens, whispered rumors from traders who speak of wild men who worship strange gods. But such stories seem distant, impossible, until the moment the first ship grinds onto the shore. The warriors leap into the shallows, their boots splashing in the surf, their shields raised against whatever resistance might come. There is none. The monks, startled from their prayers, rush to the chapel, clutching crosses and relics, their voices trembling with pleas for salvation. But the Norse move with a purpose that feels almost sacred in its intensity. They are not mindless raiders. They are men shaped by a world where survival demands boldness, where glory is won through action. The raid is swift, brutal, and precise. The warriors storm the monastery, their axes gleaming in the weak sunlight. Gold and silver are torn from altars, manuscripts scattered like leaves in a storm. Some monks flee, stumbling over the rocky paths, while others stand defiant, their faith a shield that cannot hold against steel. The cries of the devout mix with the clash of metal and the roar of the invaders. A few are taken as captives, bound for a life of servitude or ransom across the sea. The rest are left to mourn their sacred place, now desecrated its sanctity shattered like glass. The longships depart as quickly as they came, laden with treasure, their sails catching the wind as they vanish into the mist. Across Europe, the raid sends shockwaves. Chroniclers in distant courts write of the heathen men who struck like lightning, their attack an affront to Christendom itself. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records the event with a tone of horror. The ravaging of wretched heathens destroyed God's church at Lindisfarne. To the monks and kings of Europe, this is not just a robbery, but a violation of the divine order, a sign that the world is tilting toward chaos. They do not yet understand who these Norsemen are, nor the forces that drive them. They see only barbarians, godless and cruel. But to the Norse, this is no act of blasphemy. It is a triumph, a testament to their daring, a story to be sung around the fires of their homes. Back in Scandinavia, the raiders return as heroes. In the longhouses, the treasures of Lindisfarne are laid out, chalices that gleam like stars, crosses that puzzle the Norse with their strange design. The skalds begin to weave the tale, their voices rising over the crackle of the hearth. Young men listen, their eyes wide, their hearts stirred by the promise of such glory. The raid was not just a theft, but a spark, a moment that showed what was possible. The sea, once a boundary, is now a path. The world beyond, once a rumor, is now within reach. The success at Lindisfarne whispers to every restless soul in the fjords, there is more to be had, more to be won. But what drove these men to cross the sea? Was it greed alone, or something deeper, a need to test the gods, to defy the unknown, to claim a place in a world that seemed to grow smaller with each passing year? The monks of Lindisfarne saw only destruction, but the Norse saw creation, the birth of a new age, one forged in the clash of steel, and the courage to sail into the dark. As the longships return to their harbors, the warriors carry more than gold. They carry a vision of a world vast and waiting, a world they will shape with their own hands. And yet, as the fires burn low in the Norse villages, a question lingers in the air, unspoken but heavy. What will come of this bold beginning? Will the gods smile on their daring, or will the world they've awakened rise against them? The answer lies in the voyages yet to come, in the sails that will soon dot the seas, carrying the Norse to new shores and new destinies. The sea is a restless giant, its waves whispering secrets to those who dare to listen. In the harbors of Scandinavia, where the fjords carve deep wounds into the land, the Norse gather around their most sacred creation, the longship. These are not mere vessels, but living things, crafted with reverence, their timbers hewn from ancient oaks that have stood as silent witnesses to generations. In the late 8th century, as the embers of Lindisfarne's raid still glow in the minds of the Norse, the longship becomes the heartbeat of their ambition. It is the key to their dreams, the bridge to worlds unseen, the embodiment of a people who see the sea not as a barrier, but as a road. To understand the Viking Age, You must first stand in the shadow of these ships, feel the grain of their wood, and hear the song of their sails. Picture a coastal village at dawn, the sky streaked with pink and gold. The air is alive with the scent of pine and pitch, the sounds of hammers and chisels ringing like a chorus. Shipwrights, their hands scarred and steady, work with a precision that borders on devotion. They select each tree with care, seeking oaks with straight grains and unyielding strength, trees that have weathered storms and time. The keel, the ship's spine, is laid first, a single beam that will carry the weight of a crew's hopes. Planks are shaped and overlapped, fastened with iron nails, each one driven with a prayer to the gods for strength and speed. The hull curves like the body of a serpent, sleek and sinuous, designed to dance with the waves rather than fight them. At the prow, a carver etches a dragon's head, its eyes fierce, a guardian to ward off spirits and strike fear into distant hearts. These longships are marvels, lighter than they seem, able to glide over shallow rivers or brave the open sea. They are built for speed, for stealth, for the kind of daring that turns farmers into explorers. A typical ship might stretch 30 meters, its hull narrow, its draft shallow, allowing it to slip into places other vessels could never reach. The sails, woven from wool and dyed with bold patterns, catch the wind like a lover's embrace, while rows of oars manned by warriors who know the rhythm of the sea propel the ship when the breeze falters. Every detail, from the rudder's curve to the mast's height, is a testament to a people who have learned to speak the language of the waves. In the villages, the longship is more than a tool. It is a symbol. To build one is to bind a community together. Men fell trees, women weave sails, children carry water to the workers. The elderly offer wisdom, recounting tales of voyages past, while the young dream of the journeys to come. When a ship is finished, it is launched with ceremony, offerings of mead poured into the sea, prayers to Njord, god of winds and waters, for safe passage. The moment the hull touches the waves, the village holds its breath, watching as the ship finds its balance, as if the sea itself approves. It is a moment of pride, of possibility, of a future written in salt and wind. Step aboard one of these ships, and you feel the pulse of the Viking age. The deck sways beneath your feet, the air sharp with spray. The crew, perhaps 20 or 30 strong, move as one, their hands calloused from oars, their faces weathered by sun and storm. They are not all warriors. Some are traders, some explorers, some simply seekers of something more, but they share a bond, a trust in the ship that carries them, in the stars that guide them, in the gods who watch from above. The longship is their home, their weapon, their wings. It allows them to strike like lightning, as they did at Lindisfarne, and to vanish just as quickly, leaving only whispers in their wake. The genius of the longship lies in its versatility. It can carry warriors to raid, merchants to trade, or settlers to new lands. Its shallow draft lets it navigate rivers, reaching deep into the heart of foreign kingdoms, while its strength allows it to cross oceans, chasing horizons that others dare not dream of. In the years following Lindisfarne, these ships multiply, their prows pointing toward England, Ireland, Francia, and beyond. Each voyage tests the limits of the possible. Each return brings stories that fuel the next. The Norse begin to see the world not as a series of distant shores, but as a web of possibilities, connected by the sea and their own daring. Imagine a young shipwright named Astrid standing on the shore as her first longship set sail. She spent months shaping its planks, her hands stained with pitch, her heart poured into every curve. As the ship glides away, its dragon prow cutting the waves, she feels a pang of loss and pride. Her work will carry men to glory or to their deaths. She cannot know which. But she knows the ship is strong, built with the same resolve that burns in her people. She whispers a prayer to Freyja, asking that the ship return, that its crew bring back tales to make the skalds sing. In this moment, she is part of something larger, a tide that is rising, carrying the Norse toward a destiny they cannot yet see. The longships are calling, and the Norse are answering. From every fjord and harbor, new voyages begin, each one a thread in the tapestry of the Viking age. But where will these ships lead? What shores will they find? And what stories will they bring back? The sea holds the answers, vast and unyielding, waiting for those brave enough to seek them. The firelight flickers in the longhouse, casting shadows that dance like spirits on the wooden walls. Outside, the wind howls, carrying the chill of a Scandinavian night. But within, the air is warm, thick with the scent of pine and mead. The Norse gather close, their faces illuminated by the glow, as the skald begins to speak. His voice is low, rhythmic, weaving tales, not of men, but of gods, beings as vast as the mountains, as unpredictable as the sea. In the Viking age, the Norse do not merely worship their gods, they live with them, their stories woven into every choice, every voyage, every swing of the axe. To sail with the courage of a Viking, to raid or explore or endure, is to walk in the shadow of Odin, Thor, and Freyja, whose presence shapes the world as surely as the tides. Imagine sitting among the Norse, your breath catching as the skald speaks of Yggdrasil, the great ash tree that holds the 9 worlds together. Its roots plunge into realms of frost and fire. Its branches cradle the heavens. This is the Norse cosmos, a place of balance and chaos, where gods, giants, and mortals vie for their place. At its heart is Odin, the Allfather, one-eyed and cloaked in mystery. He is the wanderer, the seeker of wisdom, who hung himself on Yggdrasil for 9 nights to learn the secrets of the runes. His ravens, Hugin and Munin, fly across the world, whispering knowledge in his ear. To the Norse, Odin is not a distant deity, but a guide, a god who demands sacrifice, sometimes of blood, sometimes of pride, for the sake of understanding. Warriors pray to him before battle, Poets invoke him before song, and explorers trust his cunning to lead them through the unknown. Beside Odin stands Thor, the Thunderer, his hammer Mjolnir a symbol of protection and power. His red beard flashes like fire, his laughter shakes the skies. Thor is the god of the common folk, the farmers and fishers who face the wrath of storms and giants. His tales are told with relish, how he battled the Midgard serpent, how he wrestled death itself. Every thunderclap is Thor's chariot rolling across the heavens. Every lightning strike a blow from his hammer. The Norse wear his hammer as amulets, carved in bone or silver, a talisman against the chaos that lurks beyond the firelight. In a world where the sea can turn cruel and the winter can kill, Thor is a reminder that strength and courage can hold the darkness at bay. Then there is Freyja, radiant and fierce, goddess of love and war, beauty and sorcery. She rides a chariot drawn by cats, her cloak of falcon feathers letting her soar through the skies. Freyja is the keeper of Satyr, a magic of foresight and fate, practiced by women who see beyond the veil of time. Her hall, Sessrumnir, welcomes half the slain warriors, sharing the dead with Odin's Valhalla. To the Norse, Freyja is a paradox, tender and unyielding, a force who binds hearts and breaks them. Women invoke her in matters of love, warriors in moments of desperation, and seers in their trances. Her tears, it is said, turn to gold, a treasure as coveted as the spoils of any raid. These gods are not distant rulers, but companions in the Norse world, their stories etched into daily life. When a shipwright carves a dragon's head, he honors Njord, god of the sea, whose breath fills the sails. When a farmer sows his fields, he offers to Freya, god of fertility, whose boar shines like the sun. When a mother buries a child, she whispers to Hel, keeper of the underworld, for mercy. The gods are present in the rituals of birth and death, in the feasts that mark the solstice, in the runes carved into stone and wood. They are not perfect Odin schemes, Thor rages, Freyja weeps, but their flaws make them real, mirrors of the Norse themselves, who know that life is a struggle worth embracing. The influence of these gods spills into the Viking age like a river. When the longships set sail, their crews carry the gods' courage. The raid on Lindisfarne, bold and shocking, was not just a grab for gold, but an act of defiance, a test of whether the Christian God could protect his own. The Norse saw no blasphemy in this. Their gods demanded boldness, not submission. Odin, who traded an eye for wisdom, would approve of such audacity. Thor, who fought without fear, would bless their axes. Freyja, who wove fate, would guide their sails. Every voyage, every battle, was a chance to honor the gods, to prove oneself worthy of their tales. Picture a warrior, Astrid, standing on the deck of a longship, her hand resting on a Thor's hammer pendant. The sea is rough, the sky dark with storm clouds. She whispers to Thor, not for calm, but for strength, for the will to face whatever lies ahead. Her crewmates do the same, their prayers a quiet chorus beneath the wind. They are not just sailors, but believers, their faith a shield as real as the wood in their hands. The gods are with them, in the creak of the ship, in the salt on their lips, in the stars that guide them home. But as the longships venture farther, they meet new gods, gods of crosses and churches, gods who demand a different kind of worship. The Norse are curious, their faith flexible, but they hold fast to their own. What happens when these worlds collide? When the old gods meet the new, and the Norse must choose between the fire of their ancestors and the light of a foreign faith. The answer lies in the voyages still to come, in the battles and bargains that will shape the Viking Age. The air is thick with the scent of iron and sweat, the clang of steel echoing through a clearing in the Scandinavian forest. It's a summer day, the sun high and fierce, and a group of young men circle one another, their wooden shields battered, their practiced swords chipped from relentless strikes. This is no game but a ritual, a forging of bodies and spirits into warriors of the Norse. In the Viking Age, to be a warrior is more than wielding a weapon. It is to live by a code, a way of being that binds courage, honor, and fate into a single thread. The longships may carry the Norse to distant shores, but it is their warriors, shaped by this code, who will carve their names into the stone of history. Picture the scene: a village nestled against a fjord, its longhouses surrounded by fields and cliffs. The training ground is a patch of earth worn smooth by generations of feet. Here, boys become men, their muscles hardened by labor, their minds sharpened by tales of glory. The warrior's path begins early, with children taught to wield a spear before they can read the runes. Fathers and uncles, grizzled from battles past, guide them, their voices gruff but patient. A good warrior, they say, is not just strong but cunning, not just fierce but loyal. To fight is to live, but to fight well is to be remembered. The sagas sing of heroes like Sigurd, who slew a dragon, or Beowulf, whose shield was his wall against death. These stories are not mere tales, but blueprints, maps to a life worth living. The weapons of the Norse are extensions of their will. The axe, broad and heavy, is the most common, its edge sharp enough to split bone or oak. Every warrior carries one, often passed down from father to son, its handle worn smooth by hands that came before. The sword, rarer and prized, is a mark of status, its blade etched with runes or patterns that shimmer like water. Spears, long and swift, are for thrusting or throwing, their tips gleaming in the firelight. Shields, round and painted with bold designs, are both defense and declaration, each one a canvas of a warrior's pride. Armor is simple leather tunics, sometimes reinforced with iron, but the Norse rely more on skill than protection. To stand in battle is to dance with death, and a true warrior knows the steps. Honor is the heart of the warrior's code. It is not just about victory, but about how it is won. To strike from the shadows is cowardice. To face an enemy openly, shield to shield, is glory. Loyalty binds warriors to their jarl, their crew, their kin. Betrayal is a stain that no blood can wash away. The sagas tell of men like Egil Skallagrimson, whose temper burned like fire, but whose loyalty to his friends was unbreakable. Egil fought not for gold alone, but for a name that would echo in the halls of his people. To die in battle, axe in hand, was to earn a seat in Valhalla, where Odin welcomes the brave. But to live well, to return with tales of valor, was to build a legacy that could outlast death itself. Imagine a warrior named Harold, his beard streaked with gray, standing before a fire as he recounts his first raid. His voice is steady, but his eyes burn with the memory of a day when he was young, when his ship struck the coast of Northumbria. He speaks of the clash of shields, the roar of his brothers, the moment when fear gave way to fire in his blood. The raid was not just for treasure, but for proof that he could stand, fight, and return. His listeners, young men with eager faces, hang on every word, their hands tightening on their own axes. Harold's scars are his credentials, his story a challenge. Will they, too, rise to meet their fate? This code shapes not just battles, but the Viking age itself. The raid on Lindisfarne was no accident, but a declaration, a test of the warrior's way against a world that seemed soft and unprepared. The longships, marvels of craft, carried men who saw themselves as instruments of destiny, their axes guided by the gods. Thor's strength was in their arms, Odin's cunning in their plans, Freya's fire in their hearts. Every voyage was a chance to prove themselves, not just to their people, but to the cosmos itself. The warrior's code was not rigid, but alive, adapting to new lands, new foes, new challenges. It was a fire that burned in the Norse, driving them to sail farther, fight harder, dream bigger. Yet, this code was not without its shadows. The pursuit of glory could lead to recklessness, the thirst for honor to vengeance. Feuds between families, sparked by a single insult, could burn for generations, costing lives and tearing kin apart. The sagas speak of men like Grettir the Strong, whose strength was unmatched, but whose temper made him an outcast. To live by the code was to walk a knife's edge, where one misstep could mean disgrace or death. And as the Norse ventured beyond their fjords, they met warriors with codes of their own, Anglo-Saxons, Franks, men who fought not for Valhalla, but for their own gods and kings. How would the Norse code hold against these new challenges? Picture a young warrior, Astrid's brother, standing on the shore as his ship prepares to sail. His axe is new, its edge untested, but his heart is heavy with the weight of expectation. He thinks of the gods, of his father's pride, of the songs that might one day bear his name. The sea stretches before him, vast and unyielding, promising glory or oblivion. As the oars dip into the water, he feels the code pulse within him, a call to be more than he is, to reach for something eternal. But what awaits him on those distant shores? Will his axe sing, or will it fall silent? The answer lies in the waves ahead, in the battles yet to be fought. The sea stretches like a vast, shimmering tapestry, its edges lost in the haze where sky and water blur. In the late 8th century, the Norse stand on their rocky shores, their longships bobbing gently in the harbors, and gaze toward the unknown. The raid on Lindisfarne has ignited a spark, a whisper that the world beyond is not just a dream, but a reality to be seized. The longships, with their dragon prows and wind-filled sails, are ready, and the Norse are restless. They are no longer content with the familiar fjords of Scandinavia. The horizon calls, and they answer, their oars dipping into the waves, carrying them to shores that will test their courage, their cunning, and their code. This is the dawn of the Viking Age's great expansion, a time when the Norse will weave their story into the fabric of distant lands. Imagine the scene, a longship slicing through the North Sea, its crew squinting against the salt spray. The men are a mix of warriors, traders, and dreamers, their hands calloused from oars, their eyes fixed on the faint line of land ahead. They are bound for the British Isles, where green hills and walled settlements promise both plunder and possibility. The journey is no small feat. The sea is a fickle ally, its moods swinging from glassy calm to roiling fury. Storms can rise without warning, waves towering like giants, testing the ship's oak and the crew's resolve. Yet the Norse trust their vessels, built with the wisdom of generations, and their stars, which guide them when the sun hides. They sing to keep rhythm, their voices low and steady, songs of Thor's battles and Odin's wanderings, as if the gods themselves row alongside them. Their first landings are tentative, exploratory. In the British Isles, they find a patchwork of kingdoms: Anglo-Saxon Wessex, Mercia, Northumbria, each with its own kings and quarrels. The Norse strike swiftly, as they did at Lindisfarne, targeting monasteries and coastal villages where resistance is weak. Gold and silver flow back to their ships, along with captives who might fetch ransom or serve in distant homes. But not every voyage is a raid. Some Norse come to trade, their holds filled with furs, amber, and walrus ivory, bartered for wine, glass, and cloth. They learn the tongues of these lands, picking up words like traders pick up coins. They watch, they listen, and they adapt, their curiosity as sharp as their axes. But the British Isles are only the beginning. The longships, with their shallow drafts, can navigate rivers as easily as seas, and soon the Norse venture deeper into Europe. They sail up the Seine, the Loire, the Rhine, their prows cutting through waters that lead to the heart of the Frankish Empire. In Paris, they clash with Frankish lords, their raids a bold challenge to a kingdom that thought itself untouchable. The Franks, with their heavy armor and stone fortresses, are formidable. But the Norse are swift, striking and vanishing before armies can muster. They learn to use the rivers as highways, slipping past defenses to plunder towns and monasteries far inland. Each raid brings wealth, but also knowledge, maps of new lands, tales of new peoples, secrets of a world larger than they ever imagined. To the east, the Norse find different paths. Along the rivers of what is now Russia, they travel the Volga and the Dnieper, their ships laden with goods for trade. They meet the Slavs, the Khazars, the Bulgars peoples whose languages and customs are strange, but whose markets are rich. The Norse trade furs and slaves for silver dirhams from the Islamic world, coins that gleam like moonlight in their hands. They establish settlements like Steria Ladoga, where Norse traders mingle with local tribes, forging alliances that will outlast any raid. These eastern voyages are less about conquest than connection, a weaving of cultures that stretches from the Baltic to the Black Sea. The Norse, ever adaptable, learn to navigate not just rivers, but the complexities of new worlds, their longships carrying them to the edges of empires. Picture a young trader, Eirik, standing on the deck of his ship as it glides down the Dnieper. His beard is still sparse, his hands more used to scales than swords. He's no warrior, but his heart burns with the same fire that drove the raiders to Lindisfarne. He trades amber for silk, listens to tales of a city called Byzantium, where gold flows like water. The men around him speak of home, of fjords and fires, but Eirik's eyes are on the horizon. He wonders what lies beyond the next bend, what stories he'll bring back to his village. The river is wide, its current strong, and he feels the pull of something greater, a world that is vast, waiting to be explored. These voyages reshape the Norse themselves. They return not just with treasure, but with ideas, with glimpses of kingdoms and gods unlike their own. The Christian crosses they see in England, the mosques they hear of in the East, challenge their understanding of the world, yet they hold fast to their own gods, their own code, even as they borrow and blend. A warrior might wear a Thor's hammer alongside a Frankish brooch. A trader might offer a prayer to Njord while counting Arab coins. The Norse are not conquerors in the way of empires. They do not seek to rule these lands, but to take what they can, learn what they must, and return stronger for it. As the longships sail farther, the Norse become a tide, washing over coasts and rivers, leaving their mark in fire and trade. But with each voyage, they stir the world they touch. Kings begin to fortify their shores, monks pray for deliverance, and warriors sharpen their blades. The Norse have opened a door, and the world is waking to their presence. What happens when these scattered raids become something more? When the Norse hunger not just for gold, but for power, for land, for a legacy that will outlast the sea itself. The answer lies in the sails gathering on the horizon, in the armies yet to march. The year is 865, and the wind carries a new kind of storm to the shores of England. The sea, once a path for fleeting raids, now bears a force unlike any the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms have faced. Longships crowd the horizon, their dragon prows glinting in the pale autumn light, their sails heavy with the weight of ambition. This is no mere raid, no swift strike for gold and glory. This is the great heathen army, a tide of Norse warriors united by a hunger not just for wealth, but for conquest, for land, for a place to carve their names into the earth. The Anglo-Saxons, divided by their petty kings and warring realms, are unprepared for the shadow that falls across their fields. The Viking Age, once a whisper of distant raids, is now a roar that will reshape the world. Picture the landing at East Anglia, where the waves lap against a pebbled shore. The ships number in the dozens, perhaps hundreds, their hulls creaking as they grind onto the beach. Warriors spill forth, their shields painted with ravens and wolves, their axes and spears catching the light. At their head are men whose names will echo through the sagas. Ivar the Boneless, Halfdan, Ub, sons of the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok, or so the tales claim. Whether Ragnar was real or a myth woven by skalds, his sons are flesh and blood, their eyes burning with purpose. They are not here to plunder and flee, but to stay, to claim the rich fields and rivers of England as their own. The Anglo-Saxons, accustomed to hit-and-run raids, watch in disbelief as the Norse set camp, their tents spreading like a dark forest across the land. The great heathen army is a force of thousands, a coalition of warriors from Norway, Denmark, and beyond, bound by shared ambition and the promise of land. They are not a disciplined army in the way of Roman legions, but a brotherhood of clans, each man fighting for his jarl, his kin, his gods. Their strength lies in their speed, their ferocity, and their ability to strike where least expected. They move like wolves, swift and relentless, their longships allowing them to slip up rivers and strike deep into the heart of kingdoms. East Anglia falls first, its king forced to provide horses and supplies, a humiliating truce that buys only time. The Norse turn their eyes north to Northumbria, where rival kings tear at each other like dogs over scraps. The attack on York in 866 is a masterstroke. The city, a hub of trade and faith, is unprepared, its walls crumbling under the Norse onslaught. The Anglo-Saxon kings, Aella and Osberht, are caught in a feud, their forces divided. The Norse storm the city, their war cries drowning out the bells of the churches. The battle is bloody, the streets choked with the fallen. Aella, the saga tells us, meets a grim fate. Some say he is subjected to the blood eagle, a ritual execution where the ribs are carved and lungs pulled out like wings. Though whether this is truth or skaldic exaggeration, none can say. York becomes a Norse stronghold renamed Jorvik, a name that will endure for centuries. The Anglo-Saxons reel, their chronicles filled with dread. The heathen army ravaged the land, and none could stand against them. The Norse do not stop at York. They march south, their boots trampling the fields of Mercia, their axes felling any who dare resist. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, Wessex, Mercia, Northumbria, are like scattered pieces on a board, unable to unite against the storm. The Norse are not invincible. Disease, hunger, and rivalries among their own leaders take their toll, but their adaptability is their strength. They build camps, fortify towns, and use the land's rivers as their veins. They are not just warriors, but settlers, bringing families, forging alliances with local lords who see profit in bending the knee. The great heathen army is a force that reshapes the land, not just through conquest, but through presence, their culture seeping into the soil. Imagine a warrior, Bjorn, standing on the walls of Jorvik, his shield scarred from battle. He is no son of Ragnar, but a farmer's son, drawn to the army by tales of glory. The city below hums with life. Norse craftsmen hammer iron. Anglo-Saxon traders barter cautiously. Children play in streets that smell of smoke and blood. Bjorn feels the weight of the moment. He is part of something larger than himself, a tide that has swept across the sea to claim a new home. He thinks of Odin, who watches from his high seat, and wonders if the Allfather sees this victory. But he also sees the faces of the defeated, the monks who fled, the villagers who now bow to Norse rule. What does it mean to conquer a land, he wonders, when the land begins to change you? The clash of worlds is profound. The Anglo-Saxons, Christian and rooted in their traditions, see the Norse as godless heathens, their raids a blasphemy against the cross. The Norse, in turn, see the Christians as weak, their monasteries easy prey, their kings too slow to act. Yet there is curiosity, too. A Norse warrior might pause at a church, puzzled by the carved Christ, so unlike the fierce gods of his own pantheon. An Anglo-Saxon might marvel at the Norse ships, their speed unmatched by any English craft. The great heathen army is not just a force of destruction, but a meeting of cultures, a collision that sparks both conflict and exchange. The army's march continues, its shadow lengthening across England. But the Anglo-Saxons are not without hope. In Wessex, a young king named Alfred begins to stir, his mind as sharp as any Norse blade. The Norse have won battles, but can they hold what they've taken? Can their code of honor and hunger for glory withstand a people who fight not just for land, but for their way of life? The answer lies in the years ahead, in the battles yet to come, where the fate of England will hang in the balance. The fire in the longhouse burns low, its embers casting a soft glow over the woven tapestries that line the walls. In a village carved into the cliffs of a Norwegian fjord, a woman sits at a loom, her fingers deftly threading wool through the warp. Her name is Gudrun, and though her hands work the cloth, her mind is elsewhere, on the tales of her grandmother, a seeress who spoke with the spirits, or on the shield maiden who sailed with her brother to distant shores. In the Viking Age, the women of the Norse are not mere shadows behind their men. They are pillars of their world, their strength as vital as the oak in a longship's keel. They weave, they fight, they they prophesy, and their voices echo in the sagas, shaping the destiny of a people who sail under the gaze of both gods and fate. Picture the daily rhythm of a Norse village, where the air hums with the sounds of life, children laughing, hammers striking iron, the low bleat of goats. Women are the heart of this world, their work the thread that binds it together. They spin wool into thread, dye it with madder and woad, and weave it into cloaks that shield warriors from the cold. They manage farms when men are at sea, sowing fields and tending livestock with a resilience born of necessity. In the longhouse, they oversee feasts, pouring mead and keeping the peace among boisterous kin. Their authority is not questioned, it is earned, rooted in the knowledge that survival depends on every hand, every heart. A woman like Gudrun might oversee the household's wealth, her keys jangling at her belt, a symbol of her power, as real as any sword. But the women of the North are not confined to the hearth. The sagas sing of shield maidens, women who take up arms and fight alongside men. Lagertha, a figure half legend, half truth, is said to have wielded a sword with the ferocity of any warrior, her courage a match for her husband Ragnar Lothbrok's. Whether she stood on the battlefield or exists only in the skald's imagination, her story reflects a truth. Norse women could choose the path of the warrior. Archaeological finds whisper of this graves where women lie with swords and shields, their bones telling tales of battles fought. These women trained as fiercely as men, their bodies honed by the same code of honor, their axes blessed by Thor's strength. To fight was not just a man's right, but a choice open to any who could wield it. Beyond the battlefield, women held power in realms unseen. The Volva, or Cirrus, was a figure of awe, her staff, and chance a bridge to the gods. She practiced satyr, a magic tied to Freyja, weaving spells to see the future or shift the threads of fate. Picture a Volva standing before a gathered crowd, her eyes distant, her voice rising like smoke. She speaks of omens of storms to come, of victories or doom, and the warriors listen, their plans shaped by her words. In a world where fate is as real as the sea, the Volva's power is immense, her visions a guide through the uncertainty of voyages and wars. Even kings sought her counsel, offering gold for a glimpse of what lay ahead. Women also shaped the Viking age through their roles as mothers, wives, and daughters. They passed down stories, teaching children the sagas of their people, ensuring the gods and heroes lived on. A mother might carve a rune for her son's safe return, her prayers to Freyja as fervent as any warrior's oath to Odin. Marriages, often arranged, were alliances that bound clans, and women like Odd the Deep-Minded, a settler in Iceland, carried their families to new lands, their wisdom guiding the founding of new homes. Odd's story is no myth. She led her kin across the sea after loss, her resolve turning grief into legacy. Women like her were not just survivors, but builders, their hands laying the foundations of the Norse diaspora. Imagine a young woman, Sigrid, standing on the shore as her brother's longship fades into the mist. She is no shield maiden, no seeress, but her heart is fierce. She tends the farm in his absence, her hands calloused from the plow, her mind sharp with the weight of responsibility. At night, she listens to the skalds, her imagination soaring to the battles and lands her brother will see. She wonders if she too could sail, could fight, could shape her own saga. The Norse world, for all its harshness, offers her that chance, not always, not easily, but enough to kindle hope. Her life is a balance of duty and desire, a reflection of the women who hold the North together. The influence of Norse women ripples beyond their villages. As the great heathen army sweeps through England, women follow, not just as camp followers, but as settlers, traders, and sometimes warriors. They bring their gods, their skills, their stories, weaving Norse culture into the tapestry of Anglo-Saxon life. In Jorvik, women manage markets, their stalls filled with amber and cloth, their voices as firm as any jarl's. They negotiate with Christian locals, their pragmatism bridging worlds. Yet they hold fast to their own ways, their Thor's hammer pendants gleaming beside crosses, a quiet defiance of a changing world. The women of the North are a paradox rooted in tradition, yet bold in their choices, gentle in their care, yet fierce in their will. They are the weavers of cloth and fate, the keepers of home and hope. But as the Viking age expands, new challenges arise. The Christian lands they touch have different views of women, different gods, different rules. How will the shield maidens and seeresses fare in a world that seeks to bind them? Will their voices still carry, their stories still shape the future? The answer lies in the lands they settle, in the battles they fight, in the legacies they leave behind. The sea is a restless companion, its waves whispering of new beginnings as the longships glide toward uncharted shores. In the late 9th century, the Norse are no longer just raiders or traders. They are settlers, their hearts turning from conquest to creation. The fjords of Scandinavia, with their thin soil and crowded villages, can no longer hold the ambitions of a people whose eyes are fixed on the horizon. Iceland, Greenland, the Faroe Islands, and even the distant coasts of the British Isles beckon, offering not just wealth, but space, a chance to build new homes under skies untouched by the past. The Viking Age is not only a saga of axes and sails, but of roots planted in foreign soil, of communities forged in the face of ice and wind. This is the story of the Norse settlers, whose courage and resilience shaped lands as enduring as their legends. Imagine a longship approaching Iceland, its cliffs rising like dark sentinels from the mist. The year is around 870, and the island is a wilderness of fire and ice, volcanic rock cooled by glaciers, its valleys green but unforgiving. The Norse, led by men like Ingolfur Arnarsson, are not deterred. Ingolfur, the saga tells us, casts his high seat pillars into the sea, vowing to settle where they land, trusting the gods to guide his fate. The pillars wash ashore at a place he names Reykjavik, the Bay of Smokes, where geothermal springs hiss like spirits. Here, he builds his longhouse, its timbers hauled from distant forests, its hearth a beacon for others who follow. Iceland is no easy home. Its winters are brutal, its summers fleeting, but the North Sea possibility, where others see desolation. They bring sheep, horses, and dreams, carving farms from the lava fields. The settler's life is one of relentless labor. Men and women work side by side, clearing land, building walls of turf and stone, coaxing crops from soil that fights their every effort. Women like Aud the deep-minded, a widow of fierce resolve, lead their families to Iceland after loss in Norway and Ireland. Aud's story is etched in the sagas. She claims vast lands, frees her slaves, and builds a community that thrives under her wisdom. Her farm at Hvammr becomes a hub, her name a symbol of what it means to endure. The settlers plant barley and oats, herd sheep, and fish the teeming waters. Their lives a delicate balance with a land that gives sparingly but rewards persistence. They are not just surviving, but shaping, their longhouses rising like markers of a new world. Greenland, farther still, tests the limits of Norse ambition. Around 985, Eric the Red, exiled from Iceland for his fiery temper, sails west, finding a land of towering fjords and sparse green valleys. He names it Greenland, a clever lure to draw others, though ice dominates its edges. Eric's settlement at Brattahlid becomes a foothold, its people raising livestock and hunting seals under skies streaked with the northern lights. The journey to Greenland is perilous, the seas treacherous, and the winters long enough to break the spirit. Yet the Norse endure, their longships bringing new families, their sagas filled with tales of exploration. They trade walrus ivory and furs, their connections stretching back to Iceland and Norway. A fragile thread across the ocean. The Faroe Islands, too, become a Norse haven, their steep cliffs and grassy slopes dotted with settlements by the late 9th century. Here, the Norse adapt to a world of wind and waves, their farms clinging to hillsides, their boats harvesting the sea's bounty. These islands, like Iceland, are places of freedom, where men and women can escape the hierarchies of Scandinavia and build anew. The settlers bring their gods Thor's hammer carved into stones, offerings to Njord for safe seas, and their stories, which blend with the wind's howl to create a new mythology. The sagas of these places are not of battles, but of survival, of families forging homes in lands that test their every strength. Picture a woman, Thora, standing on the rocky shore of Iceland, her hands rough from digging in the stubborn earth. Her husband is at sea, trading in Dublin, and she oversees the farm alone, her children helping to herd the sheep. The wind carries the scent of salt and ash, the volcano nearby a reminder of the land's power. Thora thinks of her mother's tales, of Freya's strength and Odd's courage, and finds her own resolve. She is no warrior, no seeress, but her work is a quiet heroism, her life a thread in the tapestry of a new land. At night, she tells her children stories of the gods, of ships that sail beyond the stars, keeping the old ways alive in a new world. These settlements are not just homes, but experiments, proof of the Norse ability to adapt. In the British Isles, places like the Isle of Man and the Orkneys become Norse strongholds, their culture blending with local Celtic traditions. Norse women marry Anglo-Saxon men, their children speaking a mix of tongues. In Jorvik, the Norse capital in England, settlers build workshops and markets, their lives a bridge between conqueror and neighbor. The settler's path is not easy. Disease, famine, and isolation take their toll. But it is a path of creation, of building something that will outlast the raids and the wars. Yet even as the Norse settle, they remain restless. The sea still calls, whispering of lands beyond the known. Some look west to rumors of a place called Vinland, where the earth is said to yield wild grapes. Others look to their new homes, wondering if they can hold against the challenges of time. The settlers have planted roots, but can those roots withstand the storms to come? Can the Norse build a legacy as enduring as their sagas? Or will their new worlds fade like mist over the fjords? The answer lies in the voyages yet to be taken, in the lands yet to be claimed. The marketplace hums with life, a cacophony of voices rising over the clatter of carts and the bleating of livestock. In the bustling trading hub of Hedeby, where the waters of the Baltic lap against wooden docks, the Norse stand as masters of commerce, their hands exchanging goods that have traveled from the edges of the known world. It's the early 10th century, and the Viking Age is not just a saga of raids and conquests, but of trade, a web of exchange that stretches from the fjords of Scandinavia to the bazaars of Byzantium. The longships that once carried warriors now bear amber, furs, and slaves, returning with silver, silk, and spices. The Norse are no longer just raiders, they are merchants, their hunger for wealth as fierce as their thirst for glory. Their markets the beating heart of a new kind of empire. Picture the docks of Hedeby, a town nestled at the border of Denmark and the Frankish lands. The air is thick with the scent of tar and fish, the shouts of traders mingling with the cries of gulls. Longships line the shore, their hulls laden with goods from distant lands. A merchant unloads bales of fox pelts, their fur glinting in the sunlight, while another barters walrus ivory, its creamy sheen coveted by craftsmen far beyond the north. Amber, the gold of the Baltic, is weighed carefully, its warm glow a treasure pulled from the sea's embrace. Across the market, a woman sells intricately woven cloth, her fingers stained with the dyes of her trade. The stalls are a mosaic of the world: Frankish glass beads, Arab silver coins, Irish wool, even spices from lands so far they seem like myth. The Norse are natural traders, their longships perfectly suited to carry goods across seas and rivers. From Hedeby and Birka in Sweden, they sail west to the markets of Dublin and Jorvik, where Norse settlers barter with Anglo-Saxons and Celts. They venture east along the rivers of the Rus, reaching the markets of Novgorod and Kiev, where they trade with Slavs and Khazars. The Volga carries them to the great cities of the Islamic world, Baghdad, Bukhara, where they exchange furs and slaves for dirhams, silver coins that jingle in their pouches like promises. In Constantinople, the great city of the Byzantines, Norse traders marvel at golden domes and haggle for silk, their eyes wide at a world so unlike their own. These routes are not just paths of trade, but arteries of culture, carrying ideas, stories, and beliefs back to the north. The wealth of trade transforms the Norse world. In their villages, silver hoards are buried beneath the earth, a safeguard against uncertain times. A single hoard might hold coins from Arabia, hacksilver from Francia, and rings crafted in Dublin, a testament to the reach of Norse ambition. This wealth fuels more than greed. It builds ships, arms warriors, and strengthens clans. A successful trader might rise to become a jarl, his longhouse adorned with treasures that tell of distant shores. Women, too, share in this prosperity, their brooches and beads reflecting the markets they help sustain. In Birka, a woman named Estrid oversees a workshop, her scales and weights as precise as any warrior's axe. Her trade in amber and cloth, a quiet power that shapes her community. Yet trade is not without its perils. The seas are treacherous, and pirates, often Norse themselves, lurk in wait, their ships as swift as those they hunt. On land, traders navigate the politics of foreign courts, where a wrong word can mean death or ruin. The sagas tell of men like Otter, a merchant who sailed to the court of King Alfred of Wessex. His tales of the North, so vivid they were recorded for posterity. Otter spoke of whale hunts and reindeer herds, of markets in the Arctic and the wealth they brought. His journeys were a dance of risk and reward, each voyage a gamble with the gods' favor. To trade was to live on the edge, to trust in Njord's winds and one's own cunning. Imagine a young trader, Sven, standing in the market of Kiev, his ship moored on the Dnieper's banks. His hands clutch a pouch of Arab silver, the coins warm from his grip. He's traded furs from the forests of the Rus, bartered with men whose language he barely understands. The market is a riot of colors, silks from the east, furs from the north, spices that burn the tongue. Sven feels the weight of his father's expectations, the hope that this journey will bring wealth to their village. He thinks of Freyja, whose tears turn to gold, and wonders if his own efforts will be enough. The world is vast, he realizes, and he is but a thread in its tapestry. Yet his trade binds him to it, a link in a chain that spans continents. The markets of the Viking Age are more than places of exchange. They are meeting grounds of cultures. In Jorvik, Norse traders learn Christian prayers to ease their dealings with Anglo-Saxon merchants. In the East, they see mosques and hear tales of a single god. Their curiosity piqued even as they clutch their Thor's hammers. These encounters plant seeds of change, subtle but deep, that will grow as the Norse world expands. Trade brings not just wealth, but questions about faith, about power, about the place of the Norse in a world growing ever larger. As the longships sail back to their harbors, laden with treasures, the Norse carry more than goods. They carry stories of distant lands, of peoples and gods unlike their own. These stories stir the restless, fueling dreams of new voyages, new conquests. But the world they touch is waking, its kings and emperors taking note of the Norse sails. Can the traders keep their routes open, their markets thriving, in a world that begins to push back? What happens when the wealth of trade meets the ambition of conquest? The answer lies in the rivers and seas ahead, in the markets yet to be won. The wind carries the scent of smoke and iron across the fields of Denmark, where the clash of shields echoes like thunder. It's the late 10th century, and the Viking Age is at its zenith, a time when ambition turns men into kings and kings into legends. The longships that once carried raiders now bear armies, their sails heavy with the weight of destiny. In Scandinavia, the Norse are no longer just clans bound by loyalty, but kingdoms forged in fire, led by men whose names will endure in stone and song. Harald Bluetooth, Sven Forkbeard, and others rise, their eyes fixed not only on foreign shores, but on the lands of their own people, where power is a prize won through cunning and steel. This is the story of the clash of kings, where the Norse turn their axes inward and outward, shaping the Viking Age through battles that will echo across centuries. Picture a fortified hall in Jelling, Denmark, its timbers dark with age, its hearth blazing against the winter's chill. Here, Harald Bluetooth, son of Gorm the Old, holds court, his presence as commanding as the runestones he raises. Harald is a man of vision, his beard flecked with gray, his mind as sharp as the sword at his side. He seeks to unite Denmark, to bind its warring clans under one crown, and to extend his reach to Norway and beyond. The sagas tell of his battles against rivals, his victories carved into the Jelling stones, where he proclaims himself king and claims to have made the Danes Christian. His rule is a balancing act, honoring the old gods to keep his warriors loyal, embracing the new faith to forge alliances with Christian kingdoms. Harald's ambition is a fire burning bright but dangerous, threatening to consume those who stand in his way. Across the sea in England, the Norse hold Jorvik, but the Anglo-Saxon king, Alfred the Great, has grown strong in Wessex. Alfred's victories against the great heathen army have made him a legend. His forts and armies, a wall against Norse ambition. The Norse, under leaders like Guthrum, clash with Alfred in battles that shake the land, Eddington, Chippenham, where fields turn to mud and blood. These are not just fights for land, but for identity, a struggle between the Norse code of honor and the Christian resolve of a king who dreams of a united England. The Treaty of Wedmore, struck in 878, carves a fragile peace, creating the Danelaw, a region where Norse law holds sway. Yet peace is fleeting, and the clash of kings simmers beneath the surface, waiting for a spark to reignite. Back in Scandinavia, Harald Bluetooth's reign is challenged by his own son, Sven Forkbeard, a warrior whose ambition burns hotter than his father's. Sven is a man of the old ways, his faith in Odin and Thor unshaken by the cross his father raises. The saga's whisper of betrayal, Sven rebels, driving Harald from the throne, a son against a father in a clash that tears at the heart of Denmark. Harald's death, whether by Sven's hand or in exile, marks a turning point. Sven takes the crown, his eyes turning to England, where the Danelaw weakens under Anglo-Saxon pressure. In 991, Sven leads raids that shake the English coast, culminating in the Battle of Maldon, where Anglo-Saxon courage meets Norse ferocity in a clash immortalized in poetry. Sven's ambition is boundless. He dreams not just of raids, but of a kingdom across the sea. Imagine a warrior, Olaf, standing in Sven's army, his shield heavy from the weight of battles fought. He's seen the fields of England, the churches looted, the rivers that carry Norse ships to victory. But he's also seen the cost, comrades fallen, villages burned, a land that resists even as it yields. Olaf wonders if Sven's dream of conquest can hold, if the gods favor this endless war. He thinks of home, of the fjords where his sister weaves by the fire, and wonders if this clash of kings will bring glory or ruin. The battlefield is a crucible, forging heroes and breaking them. And Olaf feels the weight of a world in flux, where old gods and new kings vie for the soul of the Norse. These battles are not just for power, but for legacy. In Norway, Olaf Tryggvason rises, a king whose Christian zeal burns as fiercely as his warrior's heart. He seeks to unite Norway under the cross, clashing with jarls who cling to the old gods. His battles, like those of Harald and Sven, are as much about belief as territory. The Norse world is splitting, its people caught between the hammer of Thor and the cross of Christ. Every clash reshapes the land, runestones rise, churches are built, old shrines are abandoned. The kings fight not just for themselves, but for the future, for a world where their names will be sung by skalds or whispered in prayers. The clash of kings is a fire that burns across the Viking age, its flames licking at England, Denmark, Norway, and beyond. Each battle, each betrayal, weaves a new thread into the Norse saga, a story of ambition and sacrifice. Yet as the kings fight, their people feel the cost, farms left untended, families torn apart, a world caught between the old ways and the new. The longships still sail, prows pointing to new conquests, but the horizon grows uncertain. Can these kings forge a lasting legacy? Or will their crowns crumble under the weight of their own ambition? The answer lies in the battles yet to come, in the choices that will shape the Norse world. The northern sky glows with the eerie dance of the aurora, its light weaving patterns that seem to whisper of gods and destinies. In the late 10th century, the Norse stand at a crossroads, their world trembling on the edge of change. The longships still sail, carrying warriors and traders to distant shores. But a new force stirs in the hearts of the Norse, a faith that speaks not of Odin's ravens or Thor's hammer, but of a single God, a cross, and a promise of salvation. The Christianization of the Norse is no sudden wave, but a slow tide, seeping into their villages, their sagas, their souls. This is a story of faith in transition, of a people caught between the fire of their ancient gods and the light of a new belief, reshaping the Viking age in ways no battle could. Picture a longhouse in Norway, its beams carved with runes, its hearth warm against the winter's bite. A family gathers, their faces lit by flickering flames, as a skald recounts the tale of Odin's sacrifice on Yggdrasil. Yet, at the edge of the circle, a young woman, Ingrid, wears a small silver cross alongside her Thor's hammer pendant. She's heard of the Christian God from traders in Jorvik, seen churches rise in Denmark under Harald Bluetooth's rule. Her father scoffs, his loyalty to the old gods unshaken, but Ingrid wonders. The cross promises a heaven without battle, a peace unlike the feasting halls of Valhalla. The Norse world, once bound by the tailies of Asgard, is beginning to fracture, its people torn between the familiar and the foreign. The seeds of Christianity were sown by the Norse themselves, carried back from their voyages. In England, the Danelaw exposed settlers to Anglo-Saxon priests, their churches built on the ashes of raided monasteries. In Francia, Norse traders bartered with Christians, their silver coins stamped with crosses. In the East, the Rus met Byzantine priests, whose golden icons dazzled even those who prayed to Freyja. These encounters were not just transactions, but conversations, moments where the Norse glimpsed a faith that spoke of mercy rather than might. Yet the old gods held firm, their stories etched into the landscape, sacred groves, runestones, offerings cast into the sea. To abandon them was to risk the wrath of ancestors, to unravel the very fabric of Norse identity. Kings played a pivotal role in this shift. Harald Bluetooth, crowned in Denmark, saw Christianity as a tool to unite his people and forge alliances with Christian realms. His gelling stone, towering and proud, declares that he made the Danes Christian, a bold claim that belies the struggle. Many of his warriors resisted, their loyalty to Thor unbroken. But Harald's baptism sent ripples through the north. In Norway, Olaf Tryggvason took up the cross with zeal, his sword as ready to convert as to conquer. He sailed from village to village, offering baptism or battle, his fervor burning through sacred groves and pagan shrines. The sagas tell of jarls who knelt to save their lives, but also of those who died clutching Thor's hammer, their defiance a final offering to the old gods. The transition was not just a matter of faith, but of culture. Christianity brought new rhythms, churches replaced sacred groves, priests challenged the authority of the vulva, and Sundays reshaped the week. Runestones began to bear crosses alongside runes, their inscriptions blending prayers to Christ with tributes to fallen warriors. In Iceland, the Althing, the Great Assembly, debated the new faith around the year 1000, choosing baptism to avoid civil war. The decision was pragmatic, but the tension lingered. Families split, old rituals practiced in secret, the gods of Asgard whispering in the shadows. The Norse, ever adaptable, found ways to blend the old with the new, wearing crosses, but still carving ravens, praying to Christ, but offering mead to Njord. Imagine a seeress, Astrid, standing on a hill, overlooking her Icelandic village. Her staff is planted in the earth, her eyes tracing the stars. She once wove seder, speaking with spirits, but now a church stands where her sacred grove once grew. The villagers call her wise, but they no longer seek her visions, turning instead to a priest who speaks of a god she cannot see. Astrid feels the weight of change, the fading of Freya's voice in her dreams, yet she sees her people prosper, their farms thriving under the new faith's promise of peace. She wonders if the gods are angry, or if they, too, bend to the tide of time. Her heart is a battleground, torn between the old ways and the new, a mirror of the Norse world itself. The Christianization of the Norse was not a conquest, but a negotiation. In Jorvik, Norse settlers attended Mass, but buried their dead with Thor's hammers. In Greenland, Eric the Red Sun, Leif Erikson, is said to have carried the cross to new lands, yet his mother built a church while he sailed for adventure. The old gods did not vanish, they lingered in stories, in the names of days: Wednesday for Odin, Thursday for Thor, in the courage that drove the Norse to sea. But the cross gained ground, its promise of unity and eternity appealing to a people weary of endless feuds. Kings like Sven Forkbeard, who raided England with pagan ferocity, saw their sons baptized, their crowns resting on Christian altars. This shift reshaped the Viking Age, softening the edges of its ferocity. The Norse who once struck fear into Europe now built churches, their longships carrying priests as often as warriors. Yet the transition was not without loss. The vulva's chants faded, the sacred groves fell silent, and the sagas began to speak less of gods and more of kings. As the Norse embraced the cross, they stood on the brink of a new world, one where their sails would carry them farther than ever before. But what would they find in those distant lands? Would the new faith guide them, or would the old gods call them back? The answer lies in the voyages yet to come, in the horizons that await. The sea stretches boundless, a mirror of stars under a twilight sky, as a lone longship glides through waters no Norse sail has touched before. It's the late 10th century, and the Viking Age is at its boldest, driven by a restless spirit that refuses to be bound by known horizons. The Norse have raided the coasts of Europe, settled the rugged shores of Iceland and Greenland, and traded in the markets of Byzantium. Yet some among them, explorers with hearts as vast as the ocean, look farther still, to lands whispered of in tales, where the sun rises differently and the earth yields secrets unknown. This is the story of the Norse at their farthest reaches, of voyages to Vinland and beyond, where courage and curiosity carried them to the edges of the world. Picture a harbor in Greenland, its fjords framed by ice and stone. The year is around 1000, and Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red, stands on the deck of his ship, his eyes fixed on the western horizon. Leif is a man of two worlds, baptized in the Christian faith, yet raised on the sagas of Thor and Odin. The tales of his father's exile and discovery of Greenland fuel his own dreams. But Leif's ambition reaches farther. He's heard stories from a sailor, Bjarni Herjolfsson, who was blown off course, and glimpsed a land of forests and gentle shores, far beyond the ice. Leif, with a crew of 35, set sail, his longship laden with hope and provisions, chasing a rumor that could become legend. The sea is treacherous, its storms a test of will, but Leif trusts his ship and the stars, believing the gods, old or new, will guide him. The journey to Vinland, as Leif will name it, is a leap into the unknown. The Norse sail past icebergs that gleam like giants' teeth, through fogs that swallow the sun. After days of wind and wave, they sight land, first a rocky coast they call Helluland, likely Baffin Island, then a forested shore named Markland, perhaps Labrador. Finally, they reach a place of gentle hills and wild grapes, a land so unlike the harsh fjords of home that it feels like a gift from Freya. Leif calls it Vinland, a name that sings of abundance. The sagas, later written, describe a land where salmon leap in rivers, where grass grows thick for cattle, where winters are milder than Greenland's. Leif and his crew build shelters, their axes ringing in the silence of a new world, their fires a beacon in a land untouched by Norse feet. Vinland, likely the coast of Newfoundland, is a marvel to the Norse. They gather grapes and timber, resources scarce in Greenland, and explore a landscape that feels alive with possibility. But they are not alone. The sagas speak of the Skrælings, the native peoples of this land, who come in skin boats, their faces painted, their voices strange. At first, there is trade furs for Norse cloth, curiosity on both sides, but mistrust grows. The Skrælings, wary of these newcomers, clash with Leif's men, their arrows as swift as Norse spears. The encounters are brief, but tense, a reminder that even in this new world, the Norse are strangers, their presence a spark that could ignite conflict. Leif, ever cautious, chooses to return to Greenland, his ship heavy with timber and tailies, his name secured as the first European to touch the Americas. Other voyages follow, led by Leif's kin. His brother Thorvald sails to Vinland, his boldness met with tragedy when a skraeling arrow finds his heart. Thorfinn Karlsefni and his wife, Gudrid, attempt a settlement, their son Snorri born in Vinland, the first European child in the New World. Gudrid, a woman of strength and faith, bridges the old gods and the new, her Christian prayers mingling with Norse resilience. Yet the settlement falters, strained by harsh winters and clashes with the Skraelings. The Norse, for all their courage, are too few, too far from home, to hold this distant land. Vinland fades into saga, a dream that lingers, but does not endure, its traces buried in the earth until archaeologists uncover them centuries later. Imagine a sailor, Einar, standing on Vinland's shore, his hands gripping a spear as he watches the Skraelings' boats vanish into the mist. He sailed farther than any in his village, seen trees taller than any in Norway, tasted fruit sweeter than mead, yet he feels the weight of distance, the pull of home. The sea that brought him here is both friend and foe, its vastness a reminder of how small his people are. Einar thinks of Leif, of the stories they'll tell, and wonders if this land will remember them. He carves a rune into a stone, a mark of their presence, and prays to both Thor and the Christian God, hedging his bets in a world that feels too big for either. These far reaches test the Norse spirit. The voyages to Vinland, though fleeting, prove their daring, their willingness to chase the unknown, but they also reveal limits. The sea is vast, the world vaster still, and even the Norse cannot conquer it all. Back in Greenland and Iceland, the tailies of Vinland become sagas, stories told by firesides to kindle the hearts of new generations. The Norse carry these dreams eastward too, to the courts of Norway and Denmark, where kings like Olaf Tryggvason and Sven Forkbeard hear of lands beyond imagining. The Viking age is stretching, its sails catching new winds, but its core remains in the north, where faith and ambition are shifting. As the Norse return from these far reaches, they bring more than timber and grapes. They bring questions. What does it mean to be Norse in a world so wide? Can their gods, old or new, guide them through such distances? The Viking age is nearing its twilight, its energy turning from exploration to consolidation. The lands they've touched, England, Iceland, Finland, carry their mark. But the world is changing, and the Norse must change with it. What will become of their legacy as the age of longships fades? The answer lies in the battles and choices yet to come, in the final chapters of their saga. The wind howls across the moors of England, carrying the distant clang of steel and the cries of warriors. It's the autumn of 1066, and the Viking age, once a blazing fire that lit the seas from Vinland to Byzantium, is flickering toward its end. The longships still sail, their dragon prows cutting through the waves, But the world they once shook is hardening against them. Kings in Scandinavia and beyond have forged stronger realms, their borders guarded by stone walls and Christian zeal. The Norse, who carved their names in blood and trade, now face a tide that turns against their way of life. This is the story of the Viking Age's twilight, a time of final battles and fading echoes, where the Norse fight not just for glory, but for their place in a world that is no longer theirs alone. Picture the banks of the River Ouse in northern England, where the town of York stands under a grey September sky. The year is 1066, and Harald Hardrada, King of Norway, has landed with a fleet of longships, his heart set on claiming the English throne. Harald is a giant among men, his saga woven with tales of battles in Byzantium and conquests in the north. He is the last great Viking king, his ambition a flame that burns against the gathering dusk. Allied with Tostig, the exiled brother of England's King Harold Godwinson, Harold's army storms ashore, their shields painted with ravens, their axes gleaming with the promise of victory. They capture York, but their triumph is brief. At Stamford Bridge, on September 25, 1066, Harold Godwinson's army meets them, a clash that will mark the end of an era. The Battle of Stamford Bridge is a storm of steel and will. Harald Hardrada fights with the fury of Thor, his banner, the Land Ravager, flying high. The sagas tell of a lone Norse warrior holding the bridge against the Anglo-Saxons, his axe felling man after man until a spear finds his heart. But even such heroics cannot stem the tide. Harold falls, an arrow piercing his throat, and with him dies the dream of a Norse England. The Anglo-Saxons triumph, but their victory is fleeting. Days later, William the Conqueror lands at Hastings, and the Norman conquest reshapes England forever. Stamford Bridge becomes a marker, the final great stand of the Viking Age, where the Norse way of war meets its match in a world that has learned to fight back. In Scandinavia, the twilight settles more slowly. Kings like Sven Forkbeard and his son Sinuth the Great had briefly claimed England, their crowns resting on both Norse and Christian foundations. Sinuth, ruling England, Denmark, and parts of Norway by 1016, was a king of two worlds, his court blending Norse skalds with Christian priests. But his empire, vast as it was, could not hold. After his death in 1035, his sons squabbled, and the Norse grip on England slipped. Denmark and Norway turned inward, their kings consolidating power, their people embracing Christianity with growing fervor. The old gods Odin, Thor, Freyja fade into folklore, their temples replaced by churches, their runestones now bearing crosses. The Viking Age, born in the raid on Lindisfarne, is waning, its energy spent in battles and voyages that stretched too far. Imagine a warrior, Bjorn, standing on the shore of a Norwegian fjord, his hair gray, his hands scarred from years of wielding an axe. He fought with Sven in England, saw Jorvik's markets thrive, heard tales of Vinland's shores. Now he watches a church rise where a sacred grove once stood, its bell tolling where the Volva once chanted. Bjorn feels the weight of time, the shift of a world that no longer sings of Valhalla. His son, baptized and named for a saint, speaks of trade, not raids, of peace, not glory. Bjorn wonders if the gods still watch, if the sagas will remember the men who sailed under their gaze. The sea before him is unchanged, but the world behind him is not. The decline of the Viking Age is not a single moment, but a slow unraveling. In Iceland, the Althing thrives, its laws rooted in Norse tradition, but tempered by Christian ethics. In Greenland, settlements cling to life, their people fishing and farming under the shadow of ice. In the British Isles, Norse blood mingles with Anglo-Saxon and Celtic, their legacy in place names York, Dublin, and in the stubborn spirit of their descendants. The longships, once the wings of the Norse, sail less often, their prows replaced by merchant cogs and Christian crosses. The world has grown larger, its kingdoms stronger. It sees no longer the Norses alone to rule, yet the twilight is not an end, but a transformation. The Norse have left their mark, runestones that stand like sentinels, sagas that sing of heroes, artifacts buried in the earth. Their voyages reshaped Europe. Their trade wove new threads into its tapestry. Their courage inspired fear and admiration. The Viking Age fades, but its echoes linger in the languages, laws, and legends of the lands they touched. The Norse become Danes, Norwegians, Swedes, their identity shifting as their kings build nations. The fire of their ambition cools, but its embers glow in the stories told by firesides, in the hearts of those who still dream of the sea. As the last longships fade into the mist, a question hangs in the air, heavy as the northern wind. What remains of the Norse, of their gods and their glory, in a world that moves forward? Can their legacy endure, not in raids or conquests, but in the quieter strength of their descendants? The answer lies not in the battles fought, but in the stories carried forward, in the traces of a people who dared to sail beyond the horizon. The northern wind whispers softly now, its voice no longer carrying the clash of axes or the creak of longship oars. The Viking Age, that fierce and fleeting era of raids, voyages, and sagas, has faded into the mist of centuries, its final embers cooled by the turning of time. Yet, as the stars gleam over the fjords of Scandinavia, the legacy of the Norse endures, woven into the fabric of our world like threads of gold in a tapestry. Their stories, once sung by skalds in firelit halls, now live in the stones they carved, the tales we tell, and the blood that still flows through the veins of their descendants. This is the final chapter of our journey, a reflection on how the Vikings' echoes resonate in our modern age, in the discoveries we unearth, the words we speak, and the dreams we carry forward. Picture a quiet fjord in Norway, where the water mirrors a sky streaked with twilight. Archaeologists kneel in the earth, their brushes uncovering a runestone, its surface etched with tales of a warrior who sailed to distant shores. These stones, scattered across Scandinavia, are silent witnesses to the Viking Age, their runes speaking of kings like Harald Bluetooth and voyages to Vinland. In places like Jorvik, now York, England, excavations reveal Norse workshops, their tools and jewelry a testament to a people who were not just raiders, but craftsmen, traders, settlers. The Coppergate dig, unearthing combs, coins, and Thor's hammer pendants, paints a picture of a bustling Norse town, its streets alive with the hum of markets. These finds are not relics, but voices, whispering of a time when the Norse reshaped the world. The Norse legacy lives in the lands they touched. In Iceland, the Althing, born in the Viking Age, endures as one of the world's oldest parliaments, its roots in the gatherings of free men and women who debated under open skies. Place names across the British Isles, suffixes like by and Thorpe carry Norse echoes, from Grimsby to Scunthorpe, marking where settlers built homes. In Normandy, the descendants of Norse raiders, granted land by a Frankish king, became the Normans. Their conquest of England in 1066, a final flourish of Viking ambition. Even in distant Newfoundland, the site of Elant's Ox Meadows, with its turf-walled houses, proves the Norse reached North America, their footprints a fleeting but indelible mark on a new world. Their language, too, lingers in our tongues. English words like sky, knife, husband, and law carry Norse roots, gifts from the Danelaw, where Anglo-Saxon and Norse voices mingled. The days of the week, Wednesday for Odin, Thursday for Thor, whisper of gods who once thundered through the north. The sagas, written down in Iceland centuries after the Viking Age, are literary treasures. Their tales of heroes like Egil Skallagrimsson and explorers like Leif Erikson, shaping our understanding of courage and curiosity. These stories, once told by firelight, now fill books, their words a bridge between past and present, inviting us to see the Norse not as barbarians, but as a people of depth and daring. Imagine a young woman, Freya, walking through a museum in Oslo, her eyes tracing the lines of a longship's prow. She's named for the goddess of love and war, a nod to her Scandinavian roots. The ship before her, the Oseberg, is a marvel, its wood preserved as if it sailed yesterday. Freya feels a pull, a connection to ancestors who faced the sea with nothing but oak and will. She thinks of her grandmother's stories, of runes and gods, and wonders how much of that world lives in her. Outside, the modern world hums cars, phones, a life far removed from the fjords. But the Viking spirit, she senses, is not gone. It's in the resilience of her people, the love of exploration, the stories that refuse to die. The Vikings inspire us still, their image woven into our culture. From films and novels to festivals where modern Vikings don horned helmets, a myth. For the Norse never wore them. They are romanticized as as fearless adventurers. Yet the truth is richer. They were farmers, traders, poets, and parents, their lives a balance of struggle and hope. Their gods, though faded, live in the archetypes of strength and wisdom we still admire. Their voyages remind us of our own restlessness, our urge to seek new horizons, whether in science, art, or the stars. The Norse taught us that to live is to dare, to weave one's own saga, even in the face of a world that changes. Their legacy is not just in artifacts or words, but in the spirit of those who carry their blood. In Scandinavia, communities celebrate their Viking heritage, reenacting battles, sailing replica ships, keeping the old crafts alive. In the wider world, descendants of the Norse, from Scotland to Canada, trace their roots to those who sailed, their DNA a map of ancient voyages. The Viking Age, though ended, is not silent. It speaks in the wind over Iceland's lava fields, in the waves that lap at Greenland's shores, in the stories we tell to make sense of who we are. As we close this journey, picture yourself standing on a cliff, the sea stretching before you, its surface catching the last light of day. The Viking Age is a distant echo, but its resonance is all around in the courage to face the unknown, in the stories that bind us to the past, in the quiet strength of those who built a world. The Norse sailed far, loved fiercely, and left their mark, not in conquest alone, but in the human spirit that endures. What will you carry forward from their saga? What story will you tell as the stars rise and the night calls you to dream? Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Viking Age. If you've enjoyed this tale, let me know in the comments. Where are you listening from? And what part of the Norse story touched you most? Until next time, may your dreams be filled with the wind of the fjords and the courage of the longships.